Alright, so we are back with another video, and today we are going to be watching the part 2 of the dark side of CS2 gambling. So the previous version, if you have not watched the video, link in description, definitely watch the video out so you can understand the story before watching part 2, okay? So watch that first, pause the video, watch that part first, and then come here. So you can get the ideas behind the story, the gambling inside the gaming industry of Counter-Strike and the fights and war and all that stuff. So if you already watched part 1, I appreciate it, and make sure you have liked the video and subscribe to the channel. And without wasting any time, let's get into the part 2 of the dark side of gambling in CS2.
They have made millions and millions of euros. I'm going to be delivering justice to these motherfuckers.
I get told that they had posted flyers everywhere in my city. And I mean everywhere. High schools, malls.
They need to go in, even if there's a security guard, even if they're gonna be taken away. If somebody goes home walking, they will be fired.
They sent 18 people outside my door having a quote-unquote protest.
We are having war with other sites as well. Most of the CSGO gambling sites are scams.
I want to know who's really behind this thing, who's really the victims, and who's really the villain.
Ooh, it's gonna be interesting.
In our last video, we got bribed, but instead of taking it, we exposed the people who offered it. Now it's time to expose the rest of the Counter-Strike gambling industry and the influencers who promote it for millions a year. Let's start with the basics of what Counter-Strike gambling really is, though. Counter-Strike is a first-person shooter video game where you can buy cosmetic options for your guns called skins. You can get these by paying $2.50 to open a loot box. It spins like a slot machine, and you get a random skin. There's an entire economy that's grown out of their rarity, and you can sell these skins for pennies or up to tens of thousands of dollars depending on their rarity. You can then take those skins to Counter-Strike casinos where they will be accepted as currency instead of cash. They use their real-world value to turn this video game into Vegas. You can play slots, roulette, and more, all with a video game skin. Think of it like their version of poker chips. And when I first began to investigate this, I thought, why don't people just use a regular casino? Why use Counter-Strike skins for this? Well, I decided to investigate by interviewing a bunch of people who do use Counter-Strike casinos, and I found a disturbing trend.
I've been in the gambling community in Counter-Strike for about, I'd say since 12 years old.
I started gambling on Counter-Strike when I was probably 13 years old.
13 years old.
14 years old.
I think I was 14. Started gambling on CSGO at the age of 12 and 13, pretty much right around there, my 13th birthday.
Yeah, most of the people I spoke to started gambling underage.
Like that's why I had a kid when in my country as well. Like he always wanted to go with me to the gaming cafe where you pay money and play the games, and I never took him because he liked Counter-Strike so much. And he was small, 14, 15, and I was like, man, this game is not for you. At least just grow up, then you can play. Because I just did not feel like the shooting games are for kids. It's just, you're too young, 12, 13, 14, you're just too young. You're not supposed to be playing it. But these days, all kind of kids are playing. You just saw like he said, 12 years old, 13 years old. So they've been in gambling for that long. And then, first of all, we all know gambling is bad. So I'm pretty interested. I'm really interested to see how this ends up.
And it was while they were playing the game. And this trend continues beyond the anecdotal. This YouTuber named Jeff surveyed over 9,000 players, and he found that around 70% of Counter-Strike gamblers start underage. Now, themed casinos have always had an audience, but with Counter-Strike, there is an underage gateway to all of this because all you need is $2.50 to get your first skin through Valve, and you don't even need to show ID, which is a huge part of this. Even worse, when you go from the game to the casinos, which are hosted on third-party websites, most don't ID the players either. Or if they do, it's only after you've already gambled thousands of dollars, which is a bit like if a liquor store asked for ID after you drank 10 bottles of liquor. It's obviously absurd, but it's also very profitable because underage gamblers not only are new customers, they're way more likely to become gambling addicts, which is how casinos make most of their money. These days, most physical casinos have a strict ID policy at the door. This isn't because they're good people, it's because they're heavily regulated and would lose their gambling license if they knowingly allowed underage players. But Counter-Strike gambling is fundamentally different. Regulation for these casinos is almost non-existent because they're offshore in Malta, Curacao, Cyprus, and most of them are using loopholes to pretend that this isn't even gambling at all. Look, I'm not going to go into too much detail here because different casinos use different loopholes, but suffice to say, this has been going on a long time. Back in 2016, a very similar story broke in a big way about scam casinos and underage gambling problems in Counter-Strike, and everyone was understandably enraged. Valve even got involved, had to send out cease and desist letters. Even the FTC went after influencers, but when the dust settled, there weren't that many consequences. Part of the reason was because of these loopholes. In fact, the most infamous casino, CSGO Lotto, claimed not even to be a casino at all. They said they were a sweepstakes. Now, this is obviously absurd. It's not true, but none of that matters because it got them out of trouble. And so the same types of casinos have continued, just with new owners and new names. What you're left with then is an industry that is unregulated, if anything, self-regulated, which I discovered creates its own race to the bottom problem, because consumer protection in an unregulated market will literally drive away your customers. For example, remember Monarch from the last video and his casino CSGO Empire? One of the things they do that I actually think is good is they block certain IPs where gambling is illegal.
What is that? Why are some countries blocked from using CSGO Empire? Due to laws and regulation, we restricted access from some countries. For example, online gambling is not permitted in the USA. Oh, okay. Which is why we don't allow traffic from USA IP address. Well, hello, VPN.
Illegal. And they admit that what they're doing is gambling. Now, you can easily get around these geo restrictions with a VPN, but it's sort of an extra hurdle. Most Counter-Strike casinos don't even do this. And listen to one gambler explain why this tiny decision to just geo-block one region, the US, affected who he chose to gamble with.
So when I went onto Empire, while it's still easy to bypass it, you could just put a VPN, just takes an extra 5 minutes. CSGO Roll, I can just, once again, type it into my browser. Deposits.
Oh, you're an American.
Yes, correct, yes.
So no VPN restriction, no geo-blocking.
Yes, correct.
Oh,
so
wow.
On Roll, 0 VPN blocking, 0 any bypassing. On Empire, there is blocking, but it truthfully is very easy to bypass.
Right. That makes sense. Most people end up going with the casino who asks them less questions, requires less from you, even if you're not illegally trying to gamble. You just don't want to have to put in personal information, anything like that. This all taught me that in the world of unregulated gambling, it's more complicated than just saying, okay, casinos want toddlers gambling. It's also market dynamics, right? You get a competitive edge by not regulating. Less work, more customers, more money, which means you can't just solve the problem by wagging your finger at bad casinos. The entire system is broken. As long as these loopholes exist, why would anyone change? In fact, some websites like Clash.gg even advertise their lack of regulation as a feature, not a bug. The CEO even bragged on Twitter, quote, "Clash just paid out its biggest one-time cash out instantly with no verification. Couldn't be more happy with the product and reputation we are building." This guy sees it as a badge of honor to do no checks. And it is a positive reputation if you want to appeal to underage players, money launderers, or just people who want to avoid a hassle, a VPN and putting in an ID. And this is all a huge problem. But how big of a problem is it, you might wonder? After all, we're talking about video game skins. How much money could this industry really be worth? I wondered the same thing. So I asked around for how much these casinos are making and got several estimates. One owner claims he has an 8-figure business, and someone who worked for his partner claims that is true. How much does he make on Clash?
8 figures.
His partner, Boris, right, also known as Dogs Playing Poker, Friendly Chemist, he told me directly that it was making about $50 million a month.
That's a lot of money, and this roughly matches what the popular gambling Counter-Strike YouTuber told me as well, saying he'd estimate these sites are making tens of millions monthly. And there are so many of these sites that the YouTuber Jeff estimated it all in a different way, looking at the total amount of website traffic compared to a popular online casino.
So when you bring them together, those CSGO websites bring almost double the traffic of the biggest online casino today. And this online casino declared a gross revenue of 2.6 billion in 2022. Now, that doesn't mean the CSGO websites are grossing more, but it's a great element to put things in perspective.
So even though it's tough getting an exact number since these casinos might overestimate or underestimate for many reasons, either way, it's clear these businesses are making huge amounts of money. And there's many of these casinos. We've just focused on a few in our videos, but there's so many more of these websites, each potentially making millions a month. And no one's gonna change their behavior until they're incentivized to by regulation across the board. Until then, less regulation will always mean a wider customer base, even if some of those customers are underage. The irony here being the biggest voice of change so far really has been Monarch. From the last video, you guys know I am no fan of this guy's methods, but I'll be honest, there's large parts of his public arguments that are hard to argue with. He claims to understand the underage problem because that's how he started as well.
How I got into gambling myself was when I was 13 and I was playing RuneScape, and how the dual arena was like a gateway drug for me. That's how gambling started for me, and that's where it went into third-party sites. I'm just disgusted about this whole loop. I think that the whole case system on Steam is pretty horrible. The way how there is no KYC, there's it's such a powerful tool for getting children and even adults. I think even adults, they have a gambling problem. It's not only like it's not a age exclusive thing. It's just a machine that makes people gamble. Imagine there's a kid who just plays CSGO and they open one box. Pretty innocent. They get their mom's credit card. They spend €2 to open a box. Okay, then they open a second box, third box, fourth box, and so on. And soon they see their favorite influencer playing on some third-party case opening site. And this is where it's like...
Get influence, yep.
It's like switching from weed straight to, I don't know, amphetamine or something. And they just go deeper and deeper into this rabbit hole, and soon they are addicted. And the next thing you know, when they want to stop gambling, they can't. It's easy to just close these websites. But what happens when you go on social media? You go on YouTube, Instagram, Twitch, TikTok, any platform. What do you get? You get gambling ads everywhere. The algorithm starts feeding you. It's like, imagine you are addicted to heroin, and then everywhere you go, you just see like heroin, heroin, heroin. Here, look, your hero is taking heroin.
So we have to separate these two things out. Yes, this guy's methods are terrible, but I'll admit, it's nice to see a casino owner talking honestly about their industry and admitting that what it is gambling and not some kind of sweepstakes. But even if Monarch says he wants to change, without the actual power of a regulator, he just ends up having to harass people, threaten people, which isn't going to get him anywhere. Not only that, he's no saint either. His own website doesn't ID people right away. According to CSGO's Empire's terms, they only require you to verify your age if you want to withdraw more than 2,000 coins in crypto or deposit substantial amounts of money. If you withdraw via skins, there is no limit. So even the guy who claims he started underage gambling, he understands the gateway drug that skin betting websites act as. Even he refuses to fully ID customers because he knows he'd go out of business.
I'm really committed to, I want to make it stricter and stricter. Like, you can't jump to the deep end just like immediately on one day. That would make us go out of business. But really my end goal is I want to do full-blown KYC before anybody deposits. I want to make it as clean as possible.
This, more than anything, shows the limit to the let's self-regulate idea, right? Even the biggest critic of underage gambling can't bring himself to actually ID his customers up front because his competitors won't do it, and he says it would ruin his business. So maybe the solution isn't with the casinos at all. Maybe it's a good time to talk about the influencers who promote it instead. Because when I learned and asked about people who got into this type of gambling, I wondered, how did they get into it in the first place? Who did they hear about it from? And one thing kept popping up:
One of the primary ways I actually learned was through YouTube. It popped up in my recommended page because I was a big fan of Counter-Strike. I'd play it, you know, in my free time. Some gambling videos popped up and I thought, hey, you know.
Streamers kind of exposed me to that space first.
I saw it online. I saw a bunch of these YouTubers playing it.
Found out CSGO gambling just pretty much through watching people on Twitch and YouTube. Juicy was one of them. I actually remember very vividly. He was this guy that would do all these case openings on different websites and such. He was very much affiliated with them. He had codes and all of these things.
I've been surrounded by like Syndicate and like FaZe Clan, for example.
I watched my favorite YouTubers.
Right. YouTubers and streamers, of course, are going to be one of the main advertising vectors. It's been that way since 2016. Influencers are the main lifeblood of these casinos. Fast forward 8 years later, it's just different influencers, different casinos making the money than before. But unlike casinos, who we know intuitively are blood-sucking leeches on society, influencers, by contrast, well, we expect more from them. We don't get it, but we expect more. So I wanted to confront 3 different influencers who do this gambling streaming stuff of different sizes and get their opinions on why they promote this stuff and how they can possibly justify it.
I don't think people should gamble, honestly, on the sites. They shouldn't gamble at all. But I enjoy doing it, so it's what I do. If that makes any sense, I don't know.
No. That part of it makes sense. The part where you want to do it so you continue to do it, that makes sense. But let's say I'm like, I don't think smoking is good for you, but I like smoking. It makes sense that I would smoke. It doesn't make sense that I would go promote it to get people to smoke.
Yeah, no, I definitely understand that perspective too. And it's a very good argument, and it's like you can't really argue against it, right? It's not a good thing, but it's something that I still enjoy doing, and so I'm going to continue to do it.
Is it just too much money? That's an acceptable answer. It's just too much money to turn down.
There it is.
I'd say in the beginning it probably was too much money. At this point, it's not about the money for me. It's just I really enjoy doing it.
Well, in the videos, I don't sugarcoat. I don't try to convince people that winning or gambling is a way or a solid option to flip a quick buck. Even in my wins, I preface that this is not a sustainable thing. So it's not something that I necessarily, I don't know. You can watch the videos and decide for yourself if it feels like promotion, but that's how I reason it to myself. I don't even, use the rewards. I don't advertise it at all. So
okay.
I don't, the rewards thing, it's more of like I said, I don't advertise it. So I don't feel guilty.
But you do advertise. You get paid to advertise it, right?
Not the reward system. No, I don't mention the rewards.
No. I'm saying CSGO roll.
Yes.
We're talking about the gambling side.
Yes.
We both know it's not going to be good for people. And then you're kind of saying, well, I don't really promote it. I don't really advertise it.
Yeah, but
in a way, if you didn't promote or advertise it, they wouldn't pay you millions of dollars.
Yeah, I watched your Trainwrecks video and you said the same thing. You're like the less dirtier of the dirt bags. So I guess I would call myself that. And ultimately, if you watch the video, you can decide how less dirty is he really. But yeah, that's my answer.
Most people are going to, unfortunately, gamble with or without certain streamers, right? Obviously, it's intended to be like a McDonald's ad. You see a McDonald's ad, you see a Big Mac, you're gonna go, I'm craving a Big Mac. So it's the same concept.
You're saying I'm just kind of promoting McDonald's, whatever.
No,
Big
it's
Mac.
not. It's not like promoting McDonald's. Let's be honest. Gambling is a terrible addiction. My closest friend has a very, very bad gambling addiction. He'll get paid on, let's say, a Tuesday, and by Tuesday night or Wednesday morning, his whole paycheck is gone for 2 weeks, and then he has no money. And no matter what I do to intervene to help that individual try to hold his money, to help him sit there and self-exclude, he finds ways, because it's an addiction. It's just as bad as any other drug because of that dopamine rush.
Yeah, the answers were part admissions, part rationalizations. They all knew gambling was bad, but they'd stopped short of actually doing something about it because they were making money from it, even when they knew people whose own lives were hurt by it. So if you know the harm firsthand, you've seen it in your own life, how do you justify peddling that drug, as you call it?
It's going to happen in my opinion, right? And like, there is no justification. Can I say like I'm a drug dealer? Sure, you could. You know, you're gonna label certain streamers are gonna be labeled as a drug dealer, in essence, and that's okay, I guess, if people are going to view it that way.
I mean, I kind of get what he's saying.
I want to know how you view it.
How I feel?
It up because you said it was kind of like a drug. So I want.
It is a drug. I mean, it hits the dopamine levels.
And,
Hell, I
it's like crazy, you know, like when you see these people, you know, they can't look at you in eye to eye because they feel the shame, you know, the part of dignity, you know, because they know they're not doing something which is honorable or right way. So they cannot even look at you eye to eye, because when you can look somebody into eye to eye, you know that you're standing at the right path and you're walking the right path. You haven't done anything wrong, or you're not promoting anything wrong. That's where, you know, the whole body language comes in. Like any of the streamer, the video he showed, the gambling one, you see like they're mumbling, they're looking away, and, you know, looking here, there, and they're just trying to avoid the eye contact, because that's one of the key point that gives away that you know something is wrong. You're feeling guilty about it.
I get hit with dopamine levels if I hit big. It's yeah, you know, and then that becomes a YouTube trick. I feel bad. I do.
See?
Right? I hate to hear when people say I've lost money. I hate it, dude. I really it crushes me, because some people legit do it because they're bored and then they lose everything they have. And it is a terrible feeling to hear that, right?
Not to question their sincerity, but I've heard all of them say that they hate when people get addicted. They don't want to see anyone hurt, but they refuse to stop even though they know casinos are run on addicts. Fun fact, Clash.gg, who earlier we had their CEO admitting he was proud of not IDing players, also admitted that the majority of their revenue comes from a tiny fraction of their most addicted players.
What? Less than 1% of Clash account makes up for 80% of our revenue. Everyone has gambled at one point or another. At a very, very small portion develop issues. Calling everyone who enjoys gambling desperate and ruining their life perpetuates a narrative to people that you can gamble in a healthy manner. If people think they can never gamble healthy, they won't learn and build good habits. What?
Quote, less than 1% of Clash accounts make up 80% of our revenue. It's just an admission from their founder. It's an open secret. So these influencers can empathize about how horrible addiction is, but they know that's where their paycheck comes from. The CEO of Clash has a profile on Twitter that says, never gamble, the house always wins. But ironically, his house is probably from people gambling. The fact of the matter is that these people say with their mouth, I feel terrible, I feel bad. But when it comes to actually changing, they never do. Even when they directly scam people, they will still find a way to rationalize it. And this next part is pretty dark. But for a moment, we're going to have to go back for a second to the PGL major tournament and talk about the thing I was originally offered a bounty to investigate. A specific casino that is owned by the same group as CSGO Roll, but this one is called Hype Drop. It's owned by Monarch's arch nemesis. Hype Drop was a casino where instead of gambling Counter-Strike skins, you could gamble real-world items, like real-world loot boxes. For example, you could pay for a real loot box that would get you anything from like a $10 gift card to a Lamborghini, for example. It's just gambling with physical items. But the real secret sauce of this website was a loyalty program called the Daily Cases, where the more you spent, the higher level you got, the more you'd get these daily cases, which essentially were free money. Every single day, you could go on their website and open these daily cases, and theoretically, you'd get free stuff, free money. Which, if that sounds unsustainable, it is. It was all part of a scheme, it turns out, to make the Danish government believe that Hype Drop was not actually gambling. I received a letter Hype Drop gave to the Danish regulator, arguing players could not lose money on their site because over time, the daily cases paid back all the losses over roughly 3 years. This is one of those loopholes we talked about where they're going to argue they're not actually gambling because you can't lose. Now, of course, I asked Hype Drop about this, and initially they denied ever sending this letter. Eventually, I showed them about this, and
we gotta read that. That looks interesting. I mean, I'm not gonna read the whole thing, but let's just go through it. The company recommended refused not made any argument. Government where operates. Not market data kits investment encourages determine investment deliver for the expedition. Okay.
Actually, they denied ever sending this letter. Eventually, I showed them that I had their document, and they finally confessed, saying they did do it on one occasion, but denied trying to pass it off as an investment. They then quickly scurry away saying, "This is our last comment." I bet it is, because they got caught making bad faith arguments to the Danish government. This type of loophole is why in their promotional material, Hypedrop said things like, "Yes, you'll always make at least your money back," and quote, "We offer return on what you invest through our daily reward system," and quote, "It's a win-win situation every time." Now, it only takes a few moments to realize that offering jackpots and money back to losers isn't going to work. It has to be a scam, which is why many people like Monarch called this thing an unsustainable Ponzi scheme. And I can't believe I'm saying this, but he's right. On March 27th, 2024, Killian, the owner, announced that he was shutting down the site, effectively rug pulling his customers, who were all relying on these daily cases to make their losses back. This is part of what Monarch's paid goons were yelling about at the PGL majors. By removing their daily cases, Hypedrop, in my opinion, stole from their users and effectively revealed their legal loophole to be a lie. Now, with that all understood, let's circle back to this guy, Juicy, a gambling streamer who we heard from earlier. He was easily one of the biggest promoters of Hypedrop, and I wanted to know, given that he has widely promoted a scam, what was he going to do to make things right? So let's talk about Hypedrop at this point. This has been kind of what precipitated the PGL majors, according to Monarch. He says, "I had to protest Hypedrop. It was a Ponzi scheme that collapsed, and CSGO rolls next." Now, when I was looking up Hypedrop, you were one of the people who was promoting it, like one of the bigger YouTubers I saw, maybe the biggest. What's your take on promoting this stuff? Where's your ethical line for what you will take, what you won't take on?
Yeah. So to my understanding, I had never worked with a gambling site that had rewards that function like a Ponzi scheme, you know? So when I was playing on it, I'm not promoting the rewards, you know? I'm not like, this is the most rewarding IRL gambling site. So I was just playing with the product itself and, you know, making content around that. So obviously it's really f***ing annoying and bullshit when the rewards get, first off, cut down, and then second off, now there is no reward offering and the site's going away. Like, I'm obviously very upset, not just for my own intent, but also mainly for the people who, especially if people put money into Hypedrop, thinking of it like a good monetary investment versus like, I'm just gambling, you know? I'm pretty sure from my understanding, that wasn't like a advertised thing. At least they weren't advertising. They weren't saying, hey, you got to tell them about this great investment option. I think that was more of a legal loophole that they were, you know, trying to operate.
He's just lying about some of this. He says he didn't advertise his daily cases, but I think he didn't think I'd watch his videos because he definitely did.
Daily reminder, claim your daily cases. They're free monies. Code JUICY will get you 3 free cases, so might as well. I mean, my daily cases used to pay a filthy amount of money. It was a full-time income just claiming them. Claim this every day, dude, and we're making a full-time salary every month.
Yeah, he calls the daily cases basically a full-time salary. But I thought surely after seeing that Hypedrop scammed people, he would cancel his sponsorship with the same company. Like, it's the sister casino CSGO Roll, right?
Yeah.
He has to stop that now that he's scammed his audience. He didn't cancel it, right? So let me ask you, does that mean you're no longer going to work with CSGO Roll since they're run by the same people?
Well, I've already promoted the site and I already have fans who use the site. And I don't think the reward offering there is going to change. But yeah, I mean,
it's unfortunate. But I think you can see. I think you can see the logic of no one thought Hypedrop was going to rug people from these cases, these daily rewards. And if you are regretful, wouldn't that turn into some kind of action on your part to like change who you're working with?
Yeah, I understand that completely. But I feel like Counter-Strike sites aren't there to stay forever in the first place. I don't think anyone's expecting them to stay forever, and there really isn't many great options. So yeah, maybe it's f***ed up of me that I continue to do so, absolutely, but it really is one of the better options on the market right now, and there's a ton of dog shit on the market, so yeah.
And there it is. Absolutely, he doesn't want to change. Absolutely, he's not going to stop what he's doing.
He knows
At
what
the
he's
end of the
doing.
day, past all the rationalizations, that's what it comes down to. It doesn't matter what you show them, what you prove to them. They're making too much money. And that is the part that I was struggling to like really get from these people is they would always say like, I do it for the love of gambling, man. I would do it if nobody paid me. Of course, they always do it getting paid. But this is the single biggest cope of gambling streamers. In fact, even Grim told me this, who we spoke to earlier about getting harassed. Luckily for me, though, his tax records are public. So I knew that he was actually making a few $1 million a year and had a few million reasons to lie about why he was doing what he did. So I decided to ask him if maybe the money did play a role. Somebody reached out to me. They said, hey, I found Grim's business. He made $5 million last year. Is that true? And does that undermine what you said about it's not about the money?
Caught him 4K,
yeah, no, that is true. That's like what's one of the, I guess, the downsides with Norway is everything's public. If they know my company name, even just my name, they Google around, they find it. So like everything that I make is public. And yeah, you could say that the argument is obviously hypocritical because like I made a lot of money, but like I don't do it because I make a lot of money. I'd still do it if I didn't make a lot of money. And like even if I wasn't paid, I would still do it when I had excess money to do it because I like doing it. And it might like sound like a lie, but that's how I started it. And that's how I always wanted to continue.
How does that make sense?
It sounds like the $5 million might have something to do with it. It just, but that's fine. I mean,
yeah, no, I mean, like I said, I 100% understand what people would think like, oh, no, it's only because of the money. But like, I know myself that it isn't only because of the money, but it's obviously great. Don't get me wrong.
How much did you make this year?
I'd rather not say, but I could say it's a lot.
Come on, buddy.
Come on, Juicy, tell us. Tell us. Look,
so I actually don't know the exact answer myself, but I can tell you it's going to be right around Grim's number, which I know he told you already.
Grim's $5 million.
Yeah, and then I got to pay a stupid tax rate on that, but it's probably around there.
Both made about $5 million last year. So it's kind of obvious why they're not going to stop based on just a moral argument. And I began to wonder, like, how many of these influencers take these deals because they are so profitable? Well, luckily, thanks to the hard work of Jeff, who we mentioned earlier, whose documentary you should definitely go watch, I found out it's almost everyone.
This is the top 300 CSGO streamers since the beginning of this year, ranked by watch time. Of 300, 226 are currently sponsored by at least one of them. Some have up to 5. We are looking at 75%.
75%. It's insane. Counter-Strike Gambling is basically funding over half of the scene with these ridiculous paychecks. And I began to wonder, not about the people who said yes, but the people who said no. They're the minority. I wanted to know, for the people who said no, how much were they offered and why didn't they take it?
Okay.
This is something I think about a lot, because there have even been moments in time where I've been offered $300,000 for a month of gambling, $5,000 an hour. That could change my life. That could retire my mom.
Oh yeah, it's a lot of money.
That could alter my family's lineage, but I keep turning it down. That was when I was an even smaller streamer than now.
That's crazy.
Hey, big of respect, man.
One of the things I've been thinking a lot about is like how to change this, you know, if what does even change look like, right? That's part of what I'm thinking about. It's like, what does even change look like for this industry? And one thing that I came to is like, the incentives have to change because they're so out of whack. The second you allow gambling sponsorships and streamers to like get sponsorship deals, how are you going to stop someone from taking that amount of money? You're a good person, so you just don't want to do it. That's your personal line. But I think it's hard for just even somebody who's a good person to say no. You know, it's only because you know what it would do to people. But that is such a crazy amount of money.
It is.
This interview almost ruined me on this story. I began to wonder if change was even possible when money like this is in the field for play. Like, the casinos aren't going to regulate themselves because they lose customers and there's so much money at stake. Most influencers aren't going to say no because there's so much money at stake, and they could change their life and their families' lives by taking these deals. The more I looked into it, you can't expect all the people to be immune from this influence all at the same time, which is the only way to make change. It wasn't just the influencers or casinos either. Even esports, the most professional, supposedly, side of the game, was flooded with gambling. Almost every professional team had a gambling sponsor. For example, FaZe's Rollbit, the PGL Major was sponsored by 1xBet. G2 was sponsored by CSGO Roll. And this creates the same problem that it created with the influencers. If a sponsor is offering you buckets of money, it becomes really hard not to take, because if you don't take it, your competitor will. In fact, one esports owner argued the entire ecosystem in Counter-Strike, especially in the lower leagues, is basically funded by the gambling industry and gambling addicts. So I called him to understand more of how this works. Can you walk me through how gambling functions in the esports economy?
The issue is that, or the issue, I guess, at hand that you're talking about is that this activity is enabled by more controversial sponsors in gambling and skin rolling sites. If those sponsors weren't permitted, then the tier 2 and beyond scene in CS specifically would likely wither or die, or at the very least constrict to a very large degree. So that's what I meant by my tweet that you should thank your local betting crackhead in Twitch chat. If you're a fan of tier 2 CS and beyond, then the reason you're watching that team play is probably because of that better. To note, this is also true of a lot of orgs' profitability. So the value that traditional sponsors bring in for a tier 2 org, even more, with G2 and Rollbit, for example, the value that a traditional sponsor brings in versus a Gamba sponsor is like 15 or 20% of the value. So you don't really turn that down as an org owner unless you've got very specific moral qualms or disagree with gambling on a personal level.
But does this inflate the economy where if you're not taking a gambling sponsorship, you're almost at a disadvantage because your economics and what you're able to play players and attract talent is much less than somebody who, for example, has a gambling deal and is making way more money than you?
Yeah, to a degree, that's true, I think. Very, very few organizations are able to do it without Gamba. Largely, if you don't have Gamba, you're almost certainly going to be unprofitable.
You heard it there. You almost can't compete at the highest level without a gambling sponsor because they pay so much more than everyone else. And if everyone else is doing it, they will have more money to spend on a team than you and get better players and therefore likely beat you. There's just no more profitable sponsor to turn to. And so a lot of people actually take the money. So even if that sponsor is a site that allows minors to play with no ID, who cares? Just slap an 18+ sticker in your ad for them and get plausible deniability. That's what G2 did when announcing their CSGO Roll sponsorship. A depressing fact about this video is the star of it, a guy named Monarch, turned 18 only days before they announced the sponsorship, which means in the video, it was filmed when he was 17. He was underage in their casino, supposedly 18+, and no one cared. A perfect metaphor for this entire industry. It's all optics. I have to tell you, by the way, the exact day I announced I was investigating Counter-Strike gambling, CSGO Roll did announce for the first time that they were going to be asking all users to prove that they're 18 before playing. Whether or not it's coincidence, they announced it same day. I don't know. Take it for what it is. Maybe it's a token gesture. They'll roll back. Or maybe it's a sudden change of heart for the youth. I don't know. Either way, the point I'm making is that for many people and professional teams, the choice to take a gambling sponsorship is like the choice for PEDs in the Olympics or steroids in the WWE. You can say no, but if everyone else is using them and getting ahead, you choosing not to for ethical reasons will get you left behind, and your peers will become more successful than you. It's a depressing cycle that has me flashing back to the CSGO Wild days several years ago and realizing we're right where we started. CSGO Wild in 2016 was a gambling website secretly owned, slightly disputed, by FaZe Clan. And according to FaZe Banks, his motivation to do that was pretty simple.
My motivation for doing it actually was at the time we weren't making enough money to buy a CSGO team. All in, the venture was gonna cost us like $1 million, and we definitely did not have anything close to that. So my brain, like we gotta finesse it. We gotta figure out how to make the money to buy this team now, because in the next 6 months, year, this team's gonna be worth like $4 or $5 million, and we're not gonna be able to get into this game, which in our heads we need to get in this game.
Yeah, when you hear it, it sounds crazy. It sounds like a cope, but his plan actually worked. FaZe got away with it. FaZe Clan has a Counter-Strike team that won 2nd place in the infamous PGL Major all these years after CSGO Wild. It's alive and well, and still funded, by the way, by gambling, just by a different gambling website. Now it's Rollbit. It's reportedly a multi-million-dollar deal. Now look, I know seeing this is all very depressing, but we've actually learned some really valuable things. Firstly, we can't fix this at the individual level of influencers, esports teams, or even casinos. Doxing people, harassing them doesn't fix it or the underlying problems. It's a deep systemic problem of incentives. Of course, acknowledging that also doesn't absolve individuals. I wouldn't dare say it's okay for Juicy to do what he does, where people have been scammed and he continues to work with the same parent company. That said, if he stopped, it wouldn't change things suddenly. Someone would take his place. So if we're serious about trying to solve this problem, we have to look farther up the food chain than influencers, even than casinos, even than esports leagues. We have to zoom out and see the root cause.
Next time.
Valve definitely does have an underage gambling problem. They really don't have an incentive to stop it.
Underage, middle age, overage, however you want to slice it.
I think they have all the responsibility. I mean, you could pass me some of that if you want, but ultimately they're the kingpin, reaping in all of the money, or majority of the money. And there's a reason why they haven't killed it yet. They've possessed the power for all these years, but they allow it to go. And I feel like they do the bare minimum crackdown to allow it to keep operating.
What is that? The reward model that we had in place in 23 allowed to cost of daily prey. What is that? To increase beyond a comfortable level due to risks and prices. I don't know if there's gonna be part 3 of it, but it looks like part 2 was the last thing, and he summed it up. And as I say, it's not gonna stop if the influencer is gonna stop doing it. Somebody gonna take their spot. So it's just it goes back and back. It's connecting way back, and you cannot keep track of the traces. That's really, really crazy. It's just sad and depressing. Like for watching the video, it's just really sad and depressing. I don't know, man. The gambling world is crazy, and I never knew it existed, and especially in Counter Strike. It's one of my favorite game, and it still is. I hope I never had to see the truth behind it, but now I've seen it, and you have seen it too. So there we are. Or if you guys like the video, make sure you guys like, share, and subscribe, and definitely watch the part 1. Link in the description. If you have not watched it yet, you gotta make sure you watch it so you can understand the whole story. If you have just accidentally watched the part 2 before watching part 1, and make sure you guys like, share, and subscribe. You're so close to 2K subscribers, and just make sure you guys subscribe and help this channel out. Leave a comment what part you liked in the video, and if you have any comments, critics, any feedback. If you want me to react to any of the video, let me know in the comment, and my Instagram link in description. You can send me a video over there, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Till then, peace.